I think that Drew Aller is the one quarterback in college football that nobody is talking about, and he's going to have a major opportunity to increase his draft stock throughout the college football playoff. Now, this last week, Aller announced that he would be returning for his senior season at Penn State, and people forget how young he is. He's only 20 years old. He'll turn 21 in March. So by the time he'll be entering the draft next year, he'll only be 22 years old. And I look at Drew Aller as a guy who's absolutely flying underneath the radar at this point. Penn State does not have this high-flying, flashy offense like the Shedeur Sanders of the world or the Cam Wards of the world. And that's why I think people are kind of turning a blind eye to Drew Aller at this point. And there's a lot of other quarterbacks that are in consideration when you look at this year's draft class. You look at Shedeur Sanders, who's being mocked to go number 1 overall. Cam Ward, who was in the Heisman Trophy ceremony, will also be a day 1 guy as well. I look at Jalen Milroe. Will he potentially stay another year at Alabama, or will he enter the draft? You also have Quinn Ewers. That's another interesting story. I've seen some rumors that he might potentially stay another year but transfer and leave that Texas job for Arch Manning, or will he enter the NFL draft? You have some big-time talent, some big-time guys that might potentially throw their hat in the ring. Another guy, Carson Beck, he could majorly increase his stock if he comes back after this injury. But you have about 5 to 6 guys that all could potentially go on day 1, day 2 in the NFL draft. But I thought that Drew Aller, if he went in this draft class, is better than a few of the quarterbacks that I just listed off. And I felt that he had a major opportunity on his hands throughout the college football playoff to increase his draft stock. And I still think he does, regardless of if he's coming back next year or not. I think this Penn State team is going to be really good again next year, and Aller's going to take another step. We've seen him take a massive step this year. And the biggest knock on Aller so far has been his mobility. You look at every single big-time quarterback in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, etc. All of those guys in their game, whether they're a pass-first player or not, they all have a sense of mobility. They can move in the pocket. That doesn't mean they're necessarily ripping 50-yard rushes all the time like Mahomes or Joe Burrow, but you have to have that sense of pocket mobility, using your legs to get first downs in timely situations, and that's what all of the top quarterbacks in the NFL do, and that's what people were looking at Drew Aller as a big-time knock, and he's done a better job this year of using his legs, in my opinion. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. He used to just be a statue in the pocket, and he's really done a better job of using his mobility to pick up some big-time first downs, especially in that Oregon game. Used his legs in some big-time situations. But when I look at Drew Aller, I look at what he can do throwing the football, of course. I look at his arm strength. I look at his measurables. I look at his accuracy, his anticipation, and I think he's just gotten better every single year in college football. And right now, I don't think enough people are giving him that credit because of this offense, like I said. This Penn State offense is very run first. They're a gritty team. They'll dominate you at the line of scrimmage, and that shows with Aller's stats. You look at Shedeur Sanders, for instance. He had 454 attempts this year throwing the football. You look at Cam Ward, another guy, 434 attempts. And when you look at Aller's passing attempts, he only has 324, 100 less than Shedeur and Cam Ward. So I look at that as another major reason why people aren't necessarily giving him credit, because they see these stats jumping off the stat sheet like a Shedeur, like a Cam Ward. And I think another area of his game where he's also developed in the limited opportunities that he's had is pushing the ball down the field. This Penn State team really doesn't have that deep threat guy outside of Tyler Warren, but they really don't have an explosive offense. And Drew Aller, I think, has done a better job this season of pushing the football down the field. We didn't see too much of that last year. It felt like it was really in that short to intermediate game, and I think he's just done a great job of taking that next step, being more aggressive, using his eyes to look off safeties, and his anticipation, man. That is one of the things that gets a lot of people excited, is anticipation, accuracy, big arm. This guy is 6'5", 240 pounds. And if you're adding that element of him being able to pick up first downs with his legs, he is going to be a guy that a lot of scouts are licking their chops at when they're looking at him next year. And I ultimately do think it's the right decision for him to stay another year and try and increase his draft stock. We look at this jump that he's made from last season to this year and what he'll do from this year to next year, having that experience in the college football playoff. And right now, I look at this year's draft class, I think it's pretty deep. You have Cam Ward, Shedeur, Milroe, Ewers, Beck, Dart. Those are 6 guys right there that are all day 1 and day 2 guys. So if Aller feels like he's going to be better suited to go in next year's draft, I absolutely think it's a great decision. You look at the 2026 class, it's a lot more top heavy. You don't necessarily have that depth. You have Arch Manning and Nico Iamaleava that'll probably be the number 1 and number 2 overall picks. But then you have other guys like Lenoris Sellers, the South Carolina quarterback. I want to see what he can do better as a passer. What will Garrett Nussmeier look like? Jalen Daniels. And right now, I think that Allar's better than all of those guys except for Manning and Nico I. And when you look at the college football playoff this year and you look at this massive opportunity that Drew Allar has in front of him, I think he's going to have a great shot at making a deep run in the college football playoff. This Penn State team got a great draw in the first round against SMU, a team that I didn't even think should be in the college football playoff. I thought Alabama was more deserving over them. You can debate me on that if you want. They had 3 losses. I'm all right with that. They had a better strength of schedule. Regardless, Penn State is going to beat the heck out of SMU. They're an 8.5-point favorite already. I expect them to win this game. In the second round, I think they got the best draw. In the second round, they'll face a Boise State team in the Fiesta Bowl. I think their defense is really good. I think they will contain Ashton Genty as much as possible. And I think that Penn State will have no problem moving on to the Final Four, where they will either face a Georgia team that may or may not have Carson back, or they will face a Indiana or Notre Dame team. And I think that Penn State can beat either one of those teams in Indiana or Notre Dame. If Georgia has Carson back, it's going to be a lot more of a toss-up, but if they have their backup quarterback, I think that Penn State can win this game. And you're looking at a Penn State team that can make it to the national championship and can prove a lot of people wrong, including myself. I thought this Penn State team was a little fraudulent this year. I will admit it. I felt that James Franklin's ability to win the big game wasn't necessarily there. And we saw what happened in that Ohio State game earlier in the year. We saw what happened in the Big Ten championship. And I felt like if they got a tougher matchup, this could be a rough situation for Franklin where they lose in the Big Ten championship and then lose in the first round of the college football playoff. But I think they are without a doubt in the easier side of the bracket. I think they are a good football team where they can beat SMU, they can beat Boise State, and they can beat a Georgia team without their starting quarterback 100%. So I think Penn State is bound to make a deep run in the college football playoff. And the guy that's going to benefit the most from this is absolutely Drew Allar. If Allar can put together a special performance and he can make it to the championship, scouts are going to be looking at that and they're going to be nodding their head. And then it's going to come down to next year. What can he do to increase his draft stock? I'm banking on him making another massive jump from year 3 to year 4, just like we saw from year 2 to year 3. I think Drew Allar is one of the most interesting prospects in all of college football, and I don't think enough people are talking about him. Make sure you're keeping your eye on Drew Allar because I think he has a chance to become one of the highest rising quarterbacks in all of college football for next year's draft. I'm Caden Kubler, and thanks for watching.